You look like you're fine, you function, you perform, but deep down, you're exhausted. Not physically, emotionally, mentally, silently. You feel it every morning before your feet hit the floor, the pressure to hold it all together, the obvious weight of always being the strong one, the invisible burnout no one sees, but you carry it every day. And while the world claps for your strength, it never asks what it's costing you. You give, you fix, you achieve. But when do you get to rest? Einstein once said, "The monotony of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." But what if your mind has been anything but quiet? In this video, we'll reveal the hidden burnout of high performers, the kind no one talks about, the kind that hides behind high-functioning brilliance. If you've ever whispered to yourself, "I feel it, but no one sees it," you're in the right place. Because the strongest minds deserve more than silence. They deserve understanding. They deserve space. And starting today, they deserve relief. You wake up and immediately feel it. Not in your body, but in your mind. There's no crisis, no emergency. Everything seems fine. But deep inside, you're already bracing for the weight of the day. You check your phone, answer a few messages, mentally rehearse what you need to do. And before your feet even hit the floor, you're carrying it all again. People call you responsible, focused, driven. But what they don't see is how hard it is to hold everything together. Not just once in a while, but all the time. And it's not just about work, it's emotional too. You're the one everyone relies on. You're the one who fixes, who solves, who shows up. But being the strong one comes at a cost. You rarely fall apart, not because you don't want to, but because you've learned that no one really knows what to do when you do. So instead, you swallow it, smile through it, keep going. You keep giving, keep producing, keep performing. And most of the time, you don't even realize how heavy it's become. Because you've normalized it. You've learned how to look okay, even when you're slowly falling apart inside. There's a term for this that doesn't get talked about enough. It's called invisible burnout, when you're functioning on the outside, but barely holding on inside. When your soul is tired, but your calendar doesn't care. And here's the tricky part. It doesn't happen overnight. It builds, quietly, slowly, until one day, even rest feels like work. Even silence feels loud. The world claps for your results, but it never sees the cost. The late nights, the self-doubt, the pressure, the weight. And sometimes, all you want is someone to ask, "Hey, how are you?" Really. Not out of politeness. But because they actually want to know. So if this feels like you, if you've been holding your world together in silence, just know, you're not weak, you're not broken, you're just human. In a world that rarely stops to ask how the strong ones are doing. And maybe that's where we begin, with a pause, a breath, a soft, honest reminder that you matter too. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like you were speaking a completely different language? Even when you were using the same words? It's not that people don't hear you. It's that they don't get you. You think deeply, speak carefully, and feel everything, not just in your mind, but in your body, your heart. And yet, when you try to express that, most people just nod politely, then change the subject. That's the quiet pain of having a mind that works differently. You see more. You feel more. You notice patterns others miss, subtleties others ignore, contradictions others accept without question. And because of that, your experience of the world is layered, textured, intense. You might be the kind of person who can't help but analyze what someone didn't say, who picks up on energy shifts before they show in behavior, who remembers tone, detail, emotion, long after others have moved on. That's not a flaw. That's insight. But here's the problem. Most people are not built to meet that level of perception. So you adapt. You make yourself lighter, easier to understand. You water down your thoughts. You hide your emotions behind half smiles and polite conversation. Not because you want to, but because you've learned it's safer that way. Safer than watching someone glaze over. Safer than hearing, "You're too intense," or "You overthink everything." Safer than realizing that most people just don't know how to meet you where you are. And here's the catch. You become so good at hiding that even you forget how much you're carrying. You laugh at jokes that don't move you. You nod during conversations that feel empty. You go along with the flow, even when your soul is screaming for depth. All because you learned early on that the world isn't always kind to minds like yours. There's a name for that dissonance: cognitive loneliness. It's the experience of knowing there's more to life, more to people, more to meaning, and yet being surrounded by a world that's satisfied with less. It doesn't mean you're better. It just means your operating system is different. And when you live with that kind of mind, one that's always analyzing, interpreting, diving deeper, you can start to feel like an outsider, even among friends, even in a crowd, even in your own home. You start to wonder if something's wrong with you. Why can't I just relax? Why do I feel everything so strongly? Why am I always thinking, even when I don't want to be? But the truth is, nothing is wrong with you. In fact, the very things that make life harder for you, the overanalysis, the sensitivity, the constant reflection, are the same things that give your life meaning. You're not broken. You're just tuned to a frequency most people don't hear. Albert Einstein, the man known for equations and theories, once said, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant." We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. You, my friend, are the gift. But that gift can feel like a curse if it has nowhere to belong. No one to reflect it back. No one to say, "I see you, I hear you, I get it." So let me say it now, on behalf of the world that may have overlooked you. You are not too much. You are not too complicated. You are not too deep. You are rare. And while that may feel lonely, it's also a sign that you were never meant to fit into what's common. You were meant to bring something new, but even those who carry rare gifts need space to breathe, to rest, to be met with the same presence they give so freely. So here's what I invite you to do. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. Give yourself permission. Permission to stop explaining yourself to people who've never taken the time to understand themselves. Permission to share only what feels safe, and to keep sacred what feels too precious for shallow hands. Permission to say, "This is who I am," not with apology, but with quiet truth. Because once you stop fighting your mind, you start listening to it. And when that happens, your difference becomes your direction. Your perception becomes your power. And your depth, the very thing that made you feel isolated, becomes the bridge that connects you to the people who've been waiting for someone like you. They're out there, and you'll find them. But it starts by embracing the truth of who you are. You don't need to shrink to be seen. You need to stand in your frequency and let the right ones recognize the sound. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt like your chest was heavier? Like somehow, without realizing it, you absorbed someone else's pain? You weren't the one going through it, but now it's sitting in your body, like it's yours to carry. That's not imagination. That's not drama. That's emotional absorption. And it happens most to people with high emotional intelligence. The ones who feel deeply, care deeply, and can sense what others are going through, even before they say a word. You might be one of those people. You walk into a room and you feel things. You pick up the mood instantly. You know when something's off, not because anyone told you, but because you feel it in your nervous system. And here's the hidden truth. That level of sensitivity is a gift, but it's also incredibly exhausting when you don't know how to protect it. Because people can sense it too. They can feel that you're safe, that you're present, that you understand. So they come to you, they confide in you. They tell you things they've never told anyone else. And you hold it all. You hold the weight of their sadness, their confusion, their unresolved trauma. Not because you want to be the hero, not because you need to fix everything, but because you can't ignore it. Your heart won't let you. But here's the quiet tragedy. While you're showing up for everyone else, who's showing up for you? Who asks you how you really are? And stays for the full answer? Who holds space for you to unravel, to fall apart, to not be okay for a moment? So often, the ones who support the world do it alone. You carry so much, and yet when you need help, your mind tells you, don't burden anyone. They're already going through enough, and that cycle keeps you in silent exhaustion. You're not just tired, you're drained. Emotionally, energetically, spiritually. Because your empathy is constantly turned on. There's no off switch, even when you try to rest. Your mind replays the last conversation. Your chest refeels what they felt. Your heart reopens like it's your pain. And here's what no one tells you. Empathy without boundaries becomes burnout. Being a deeply feeling person in a loud world requires tools, or else you'll drown in everything you're trying to save. Albert Einstein once said something beautiful and simple. A human being is part of the whole, limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. Maybe he was reminding us that the pain we feel isn't always ours, that just because we can sense everything doesn't mean we have to carry it all. So here's a small practice, and I want you to actually try it this week. When you feel that tightness in your chest, when you're absorbing someone else's emotion, place your hand gently over your heart and whisper, "This isn't mine to hold." Then take a breath. A deep, real one. Let the exhale be a release. Say it again if you need to. "This isn't mine to hold," because if you don't release it, it will stay in your muscles, in your sleep, in your voice, in your sense of peace. You don't have to stop caring. You just have to stop confusing care with carrying, and that's the difference. When you learn to feel with people without taking on their pain as your own, that's when empathy becomes your power, not your prison. You deserve to feel light again, to feel clear again, to feel like you, not just a container for everyone else's wounds. So here's your reminder. You can love deeply without losing yourself. You can care profoundly and still say enough. You can be someone's safe space and still protect your own peace, because the world needs your heart, but it also needs you, whole, grounded, and able to breathe. You've probably heard this before. You're so smart. You always know what to do. You've got it all figured out. It sounds like a compliment, and maybe on the surface it is. But over time, something strange starts to happen, something no one talks about. You start to feel trapped by your own image, because when people label you as the smart one, they stop seeing the human behind the mind. They expect you to always have the answer, to always stay calm, to always be 5 steps ahead. So what happens when you don't? What happens on the days when your mind is foggy, your heart is heavy, and your life feels like a mess? Most people don't notice. They assume you're fine because you always seem fine. You've become the problem solver, the deep thinker, the reliable one. And in a way, it becomes your identity, even if it's quietly suffocating you. You stop asking for help. You stop admitting when you're overwhelmed. You stop letting people see you struggle, because deep down, you believe you're not allowed to. You've built your worth on being capable. And now, you don't know how to be anything else. Here's the truth. Being intelligent is a gift, but it also comes with pressure. Pressure to perform, pressure to never fail, pressure to be the strong one for everyone, including yourself. And that pressure, it's heavy, not just intellectually, but emotionally, spiritually. You begin to fear vulnerability. Not because you're afraid to feel, but because you're afraid it'll shatter the image people have of you. You're afraid they'll stop trusting you, stop respecting you, maybe even stop loving you. And that fear keeps you locked in a role that no longer fits. You play the part. You do what's expected. You carry the load quietly, skillfully. But inside, you long to put it down. Stop being the one who holds it all together. To let yourself fall apart for a minute. And not be judged for it. Einstein once said, "A person who never made a mistake never tried anything new." But what if the mistake isn't in what you do, but in the way you silence your own needs? What if you've been so focused on being the smart one that you forgot to be the real one? Let's get honest for a second. You don't always have the answer. Sometimes you feel lost. Sometimes you overthink everything. Sometimes you just want someone to hold you without expecting a solution in return. And that's not weakness. That's humanity. So what's the shift? It's learning that your intelligence doesn't have to come at the cost of your wholeness. You can be smart and still feel messy. You can be wise and still not know what to do. You can be insightful and still need support. You don't have to earn your worth through brilliance. You don't have to wear the strong and capable mask every single day. You're allowed to be soft. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to not have it all figured out. Because sometimes, the bravest thing an intelligent mind can do is admit, "I don't know. I'm overwhelmed. I need a break." Not to give up, but to reconnect with your breath, with your body, with your truth. So if you've been carrying the pressure of being the smart one for too long, let this be your invitation. Put the weight down, even just for a moment, because the world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be you. You've had this happen, haven't you? The conversation ends, but your mind doesn't. Someone says something, maybe offhand, maybe a little sharp, and hours later, it's still spinning in your head. You replay the tone, the timing, the way you reacted. You analyze it from every angle. You wonder what you should have said instead. And even if nothing big happened, it stays with you. That's what nobody explains about having a sensitive, intelligent mind. You don't just experience life, you process it. Over and over. Deeply. Your brain isn't just a thinker. It's a feeler. It stores emotion in thought form. And when something unsettles you, it doesn't just fade. It loops. Quietly, persistently. Someone else might brush it off. But not because you want to hold on to it, but because you can't let it go until your mind has understood every layer. And even when you do understand it, it still lingers. That's the invisible weight you carry. The aftermath of everything, the things left unsaid, the energy in a room, the emotions you didn't have time to feel in the moment, they all come rushing back later. It's not just overthinking. It's post-feeling. It's emotional residue that clings to your nervous system, like dust that keeps swirling even. After the storm is gone, you might find yourself lying in bed, heart heavy over something that happened 2 days ago. Or you're walking through your day normally until a memory stings you out of nowhere. And maybe you think, why am I still thinking about this? Why does this still bother me? But the truth is, it bothers you because you care, because you felt something that didn't get to complete its cycle. And your mind is trying to protect you by holding on until it feels safe enough to release. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means your mind is trying to keep you safe by reviewing the past for answers. But here's the shift. Sometimes, peace doesn't come from figuring it out. Sometimes it comes from allowing it to remain unfinished, because not everything can be resolved in thought. Some things need to be felt, released, breathed through, not solved like a puzzle. So next time your mind grabs hold of something and won't let go, try this instead. Pause. Close your eyes and ask, what part of me didn't get to be heard in that moment? Then let that part speak, not with logic, but with emotion. Maybe it's a part that felt dismissed, or disrespected, or afraid, or unseen. Name it, feel it, and then whisper, it's okay now. I'm here with you. We can let this go. Because healing doesn't mean never being affected. It means knowing how to return to yourself when something does affect you. That's emotional intelligence. That's mental freedom. That's the beauty of knowing that even when your mind holds on, you can still choose to come back. Now let me ask you something, not as a script, but from one human to another. What's one thought or memory your mind keeps replaying, even though the moment has passed? If you feel safe, share it in the comments, not for pity, not for attention, but as a way of saying, this mattered to me. And maybe that's how we begin to let it go. You're not alone in this. You never were. You've probably asked yourself this at least once. If I'm smart, why does life still feel so confusing? If I have so much insight, why am I still stuck? It's a quiet shame that lives inside many brilliant minds. You think deeply. You see patterns. You can understand others in ways they can't even understand themselves. And yet, when it comes to your own life, you often feel behind. Behind in your goals. Behind in your peace. Behind in relationships. Behind in building the life you actually want. And the most painful part? You know what to do. You've read the books, listened to the podcasts, done the self-work. But somehow, knowing hasn't translated into becoming, and you start to wonder, what's wrong with me? The answer? Nothing. Nothing is wrong with you. But something is happening. Highly intelligent people often live primarily in their minds. And when you live in the mind too long, action becomes harder. Movement feels heavier because you're not just doing things. You're over-processing them. You overthink, you overplan, you overanalyze. You build entire maps in your head before taking the first step. And sometimes, you never take that step. You don't do it out of fear or laziness. You do it because your brain is trying to protect you from failure, from embarrassment, from regret, from disappointment that cuts deeper when you've already imagined success. You carry invisible pressure. The pressure to live up to your own potential. The pressure to succeed on the first try. The pressure to make the right move, instead of just any move, and that pressure becomes paralyzing. So while others just do, you get stuck in a loop of thinking about doing. And with time, you start to believe the lie, that you're not capable, that you're falling behind, that maybe you're all insight, no impact. But let me say this clearly. You're not behind. You're simply in a different cycle. A cycle where your mind has led the way. But now, your soul is asking for embodiment. Not more knowledge, but action. Not more insight, but integration. It's not about knowing more. It's about applying what you already know, even if it's imperfect, because perfection isn't what unlocks progress. Courage does. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to begin, to move in small, messy, unpolished ways, to show your nervous system that motion is safe, to teach your mind that action doesn't equal danger. Einstein himself said, life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving. He didn't say, keep analyzing. He didn't say, plan the perfect ride. He said, keep moving. So if you've been feeling behind, not because you're lazy, but because you're stuck in your own brilliance, this is your invitation to step, to begin, to turn all that knowing into living. Now let me ask you something that may feel vulnerable, but real. What's one thing you've been thinking about for too long, that you know it's time to act on, Drop it in the comments. Not as a commitment to the world, but as a whisper to yourself. I'm ready. Because you don't need to be ahead. You just need to begin. Have you ever noticed how you can be completely composed on the outside, while your inner world is burning like a silent wildfire? You smile, you respond, you function, but under the surface, you're carrying waves of emotion so intense, it's hard to put them into words. And you don't show it, not because you're hiding something, but because you don't even know how to explain it. That's one of the lesser-known truths about highly intelligent people. They don't just think deeply, they feel deeply, and not in a dramatic, theatrical way. In a quiet, constant, often invisible way. You see, intelligence isn't just about logic or memory or calculation. Real intelligence also means heightened awareness. Awareness of nuance, of energy, of tone, of what's being said, and especially of what's not being said. You walk into a room, and within seconds, you sense the tension. You feel the unspoken.
You notice the glance, the pause, the shift in someone's voice. And while most people move on, unaffected, your mind stays with it. Your heart holds it. This sensitivity doesn't come with a switch. You can't just turn it off. So,
while others brush past subtle moments, you absorb them. You analyze them. You feel them, again and again. And because of that, life often feels louder than it should. A simple moment can echo for days. A single comment can sting long after it was said. An act of kindness can make you cry in the middle of a regular Tuesday. Not because you're too sensitive, but because your emotions live closer to the surface, even when no one else sees them. And here's the paradox. Because your mind is so articulate, so well-spoken, so composed, the world assumes you're fine. But intelligence doesn't protect you from pain. It often amplifies it, because you understand what's happening. You see the layers. You know why something hurts, but that doesn't make it hurt any less. In fact, sometimes the hardest part isn't the feeling itself. It's carrying it without anyone noticing. It's explaining depth to people who live on the surface. So what do? You stop talking about it. You keep it quiet. You become the one who listens, helps, supports, but rarely asks for the same in return. Because it's easier to hold space for others than to risk not being held when you really need it. But here's something you need to hear. Maybe for the first time. Your depth is not a problem. Your intensity is not a flaw. Your emotion is not a weakness. It's capacity. To feel, to connect, to perceive, to live life on a frequency most people never even touch. But like any powerful instrument, it needs tuning, care, boundaries, rest. Because when you carry the world, but no one carries you, eventually, even your brilliant mind begins to dim. So, this is a soft reminder. Let someone in. Even if it's just one person. Even if it's just a comment. And if you don't know what to say, start here. Yes, I feel things more than I show. Write that below, not as a performance, but as a way of reclaiming something important. Because once you give voice to what's inside, you start to feel less alone with it. You don't have to carry everything in silence. Not here. Not anymore. Let's be honest. You've probably been the one everyone turns to, the problem solver. The calm one, the one who has it together. People admire your mind. They come to you for advice, perspective, logic, and you give it, often with grace, clarity, and care. But what no one sees is how heavy that role can become. Because somewhere along the way, you learned a subtle, dangerous lesson that needing help makes you weaker. And when you're intelligent, articulate, capable, that belief becomes even more ingrained. You're the one who figures it out. You're the one who pushes through. You're the one who should be able to handle it. So you do. You handle it. Until you can't anymore. But when the cracks begin to show, When the weight becomes too much, you don't ask for help. Not because you're too proud. Not because you don't need it. But because you don't know how. How do you explain the complexity of your mind? How do you express the quiet ache that lives behind every success? How do you articulate emotions you haven't even named yet? You fear being misunderstood. You fear being judged for the very things that make you you. You fear the blank stare after sharing something sacred. So instead, you keep smiling. You say, "I'm fine." You make a joke. You redirect. You go back to helping others, and the world keeps spinning. But deep down, you know the truth. There are moments when you're not okay. There are nights when you feel like you're unraveling. There are thoughts you don't share, not with anyone. And the irony, you're surrounded by people who would gladly be there for you. If only they knew you needed them, but they don't, because you never say it. So this is a moment, right here, right now, to admit something. Even strong minds need support. Even brilliant minds break. Even you, yes, you, deserve to be held. Asking for help isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's strength in its most courageous form. It says, I value myself enough to not do this alone. Einstein once said, a person starts to live when he can live outside himself. And maybe part of that is learning to lean, to speak, to reach. Not because you've failed, but because you're finally ready to stop carrying it all in silence. So, here's your quiet invitation. If this spoke to something in you, leave a comment that simply says, I'm learning to ask. That's it. Just those 4 words. Because sometimes, the act of saying it is the beginning of healing, and who knows, someone else might read your words and feel brave enough to say it too. Rest. It sounds simple, right? But if you're someone with a constantly thinking mind, a mind that's always solving, scanning, observing, rest doesn't feel like a luxury. It feels like a challenge, sometimes even a threat. You might lie down. You might cancel the plans. You might do everything right to relax. But your mind? It's still running, still planning, still preparing, still reprocessing that thing from 3 days ago, or that mistake from 3 years ago. And maybe you've started to wonder, why is it so hard to stop? Why is it easier to stay busy, even if you're drained, than to sit in silence and just be? The answer is both simple and uncomfortable. When you've spent your whole life being productive to feel valuable, rest feels like not existing. Rest confronts the identity you built on being capable, intelligent, reliable. Rest strips away all the noise, and in that silence, the emotions you've been outrunning finally catch up. And that's why it doesn't feel restful. It feels vulnerable, because when you stop moving, your mind doesn't know what to do. With the space, you start to feel the weight, the pressure, the parts of you that have been ignored for years. That's why people like you don't just avoid rest. You avoid what rest makes you feel. So instead, you keep going. You fill every gap with more content, more tasks, more thinking. You scroll, you organize, you create, you solve. Because the doing keeps the feelings at bay. But here's the truth. Most people won't say out loud, chronic productivity is a trauma. Response. It's what happens when you learned, early on, that love is earned, that being enough means never stopping, that stillness is lazy, weak, dangerous. But that belief? It's burning you out, slowly, silently, and no, a vacation won't fix it. Because it's not about location. It's about permission, the permission to pause without guilt, to say, I've done enough today, and believe it, to sit in silence and not owe the world an explanation. Einstein said, creativity is the residue of time wasted. He understood something deep, that our most profound insights don't come from hustle, they come from stillness, from space, from breath. So maybe the goal isn't to earn rest. Maybe the goal is to unlearn the lie that says you don't deserve it, because you do. Not after the next project, Not when you've fixed everything. Not when you feel caught up. Now, right now. So let's start simple. Close your eyes. Take one deep breath and whisper to yourself, rest is safe. Rest is mine. If this touched something in you, I want you to comment one word below. Permission. Because maybe, for someone else reading, your word becomes their doorway to a different kind of life. There's a kind of pressure that no one talks about. It's not shouted. It's not loud. But it follows you everywhere. It's the pressure to always seem okay, to have the right answers, to stay calm, to look like you're handling life, even when it's handling you. People see you and assume you've got it figured out. You're so strong. You're so smart. You always know what to say. And maybe you start to believe that's who you have to be all the time. So even when your heart is heavy, you smile. Even when your thoughts are racing, you give advice. Even when you're falling apart, you show up like nothing's wrong. But here's the truth no one sees. Sometimes being the strong one feels like a prison, because if people only ever see your strength, they forget you also need support. If you're always calm, they forget. You also feel chaos. If you always seem clear, they assume you never get lost. And when that happens, there's no room for your messiness, no room to say, I don't know. No space to fall apart without someone panicking or pulling away. So, you carry it, silently. You perform being okay. Because the world has made you feel like being real would be too much. But let me ask you something gently. Who supports the one who supports everyone? Where do you go when it's your soul that needs holding? We live in a culture that rewards masks, the calm, the capable, the ones who never complain. But beneath that performance, there's exhaustion, there's loneliness, there's a longing to just be seen, fully. And maybe you're reading this thinking, but if I stop holding it all together, won't everything fall apart? Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe something even deeper would rise, something more honest, something more human. Because what if your real power isn't in your perfection, but in your ability to be honest about your limits? Einstein once said, a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. He wasn't just talking about experiments. He was talking about life. The courage to be seen in your full humanity, messy, uncertain, tired, is where true strength lives. So here's your quiet reminder today. You don't have to carry everything alone. You don't have to perform being fine all the time. You're allowed to pause, to feel, to ask for help. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you whole. If this resonates with you, comment below, I'm human too. That's it. Because maybe someone else needs to hear those words. And maybe you need to say them out loud, just once. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely exhausted, even if nothing dramatic happened? It wasn't an argument. No one yelled. But somehow, your energy was just gone. That's not your imagination. That's emotional drainage. And if you're a highly sensitive or intelligent person, you feel it even more intensely. Some people carry heavy emotional energy, not because they're bad, but because they haven't learned how to process their own pain. So instead of holding it, they spill it into rooms, into conversations, into you. And because you care, you listen. Because you're intuitive, you feel it. Because you've always been the one who understands, you absorb it. But here's the hidden cost. While they feel lighter after talking to you, you leave heavier. And this isn't about blaming others. It's about learning how to protect your energy without closing your heart. You see, when you're deeply empathetic, your nervous system acts like a sponge. It picks up on tone shifts, body language, unspoken emotion. Your body starts to process things that aren't even yours. And over time, that starts to hurt. You feel tired, but sleep doesn't fix it. You feel irritated, but there's no clear reason why. You feel anxious, but it's not coming from you. That's emotional residue, and it sticks when you haven't learned how to release it. Einstein once said, "Unthinking respect for authority is the greatest enemy of truth." Now let's reframe that. Unquestioned access to your emotional space is the greatest enemy of your well-being. Not everyone deserves full access to your energy, and that's not selfish. That's self-protection. So what can you do? First, start noticing how you feel after interactions, not just what you think. Second, build small boundaries, even invisible ones. That can mean pausing before you answer a message, taking a breath before you pick up the phone, leaving the room when you feel your body tighten. And third, the most important, create a daily ritual to come back to yourself. It could be a short walk, a body scan, a journal entry, something that says, "What I picked up today, I don't have to keep." Because when you start releasing what isn't yours, you create space for what is your peace, your clarity, your energy. So if this topic hit close to home, leave a comment below. I'm ready to release what's not mine. You never know who might read that and feel seen for the first time. You've heard it all your life. You're so strong. People admire your resilience, your ability to keep going no matter what. You show up, you solve problems. You hold others up, even when you're falling apart inside. But here's the truth nobody sees. Sometimes being strong isn't a choice. It's survival. You didn't wake up one day and choose to carry everything. Life demanded it. Maybe no one else was there. Maybe someone had to keep it all together, and that someone was you, and so you became reliable, calm, capable. But in the process, you learned to bury your own needs. You learned how to function with a full heart and an empty tank. You learned how to smile when you were aching. You learned how to say, "I'm fine," because the truth felt too heavy to share. And what hurts most? No one questions it. They see your strength and assume you don't need support. But strength without rest becomes exhaustion. Strength without softness becomes armor. And the soul, your soul, isn't built to carry forever. So here's the quiet reminder you might need today. You're allowed to break down. You're allowed to ask for help. You're allowed to not be okay. Because true strength isn't just enduring. It's allowing yourself to feel. It's saying, "I've carried enough. Now it's time to be held." If this resonates, type in the comments, "Being strong is heavy, and I'm ready to rest." Let that be the first step, back to yourself. Even the strongest hearts deserve softness. So now you know. These 7 silent struggles, they were never just your burden. They were signals. Signs that your mind is alive, deep, and beautifully aware. Yes, it's heavy sometimes. Yes, it can feel lonely. But it also means you're awake in a world that's half asleep. And the truth? You were never meant to carry it all alone. Because when you give your pain a voice, when you see yourself with compassion instead of judgment, something shifts. You begin to heal, not by changing who you are, but by finally honoring it. So if this video helped you feel seen, even just a little, don't let it end in silence. Comment below. This is the part of me I'm learning to accept. Let's build a space where the deepest minds feel less alone. And if this message touched you, subscribe. Not for more noise, but for more truth, more stillness, and more of you.